Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, welcome to episode 405, or is it 406? I might have to correct that. I think it's 405 of my live stream. I am working on finishing page 138 of my graphic novel, Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And I've been carving away at this page. Earlier today, I did a rough for a page, I think 5 or 6 pages ahead of this. So when I'm working on these comics, what I do is I'll do like roughs, and then from there, I'll kind of do like photo references, pencils, then shade the pencils, and then from there kind of finish up pages. That's kind of what I'm working on today. So the thing is, I've been working pretty steadily for most of the night. I did Artcasters earlier in the day, around 8 p.m. I guess at night, and now it's the wee hours of the morning, and I'm still carving at this page that I started during Artcasters. And I got kind of really into something I was listening to, but I think we're at a point where we can start streaming. So that's what I'm going to be working on. I'm going to try to do this without my glasses because my eyes got really tired from wearing my glasses. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't know if this happens to a lot of people who wear glasses, but I find that especially if I've been working at a computer for a while, the glasses can kind of like start irritating my eyes. So I need a break from them. But the cool thing is most of my vision correction isn't for like this close of a distance. So I think I'll be okay. If I have trouble reading your comments or anything like that, or you guys start noticing me, draw like an octopus instead of a person, let me know, and I'll put my glasses back on. All right, so anyhow, so what we're going to do is we're going to work on shading and then hopefully coloring page 138 of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I have a buffer of about 5 roughs that I want to clear, get finished pages done, and then I'll catch up on roughs after that. That was all based on a suggestion of Jim Lujan, who I was doing just roughs, thumbnails, roughs, pages, basically one at a time. And I started kind of getting a little burnt out after about 100 pages of doing it like that. And Jim Lujan actually recommended that I change it up. So every once in a while, maybe I'll do 10 roughs, or maybe I do 5 roughs and then finish pages, just to kind of keep the regulated process to where I can do it, but at the same time, like, kind of do it in a way where it's achievable. So anyhow, here we go. Let's go to the daily stream. So this is basically the cheap Wacom cam, and then to my left, I guess that's my left, is the pencils for page 138, and I'm going to be working on shading them. And then down below that is the script, which I think we're pretty much done with the script. So we're kind of making progress on this page. And then right in front of me is the previous pages that show the setting. So these are my previous finished pages, which are pretty awesome, beautiful pages, if you ask me. But anyhow, who's asking me? All right, so I have a fresh cup of coffee. I'm a little bit tired, a little bit delirious from working all day. But I want to push this and see how far I can go. At minimum, I want to work for about an hour on this. So if you're up late at night or in the early wee hours and you are working on comics, you are not alone. And if you're sleeping, what are you doing? You should be awake working on comics. I'm kidding. This is kind of an insane hour to start a stream. But for my night owls, or I should say early morning owls, welcome. Welcome. Feel free to say hi. And let's get started. So from what I can gather, I want to make sure my references are at a page. This has like a nice panel that kind of shows the lighting of the entire scene, so I'm going to probably go with that. I print out pages as I'm going, including roughs, and then I put them in sequence so I can kind of check them out as I go. I think Corey Kerr had an interesting kind of version of that I think might be something I'll incorporate maybe on the next book, where he does his pages in sequence in a group PDF, which is kind of interesting. That's like an interesting approach to it. So he'll basically be putting it together in InDesign as he goes. Whereas for me, I tend to be kind of looking at the full sequences with prints, and then I will combine all of these probably into InDesign at the end of the process. I think his method's probably better. It's interesting. All right. So anyhow, we're going to basically start shading, kind of checking out how the lighting looks on the original page. And I'm going to see if I can do this without my glasses. That's the big conundrum is this better? In fact, let me do a quick test. Because if it's better with my glasses, I might just need to like wipe them. That's the most annoying part. You know, at this distance, I'm not really seeing it much clearer with my glasses, so I'll keep them off till my eyes kind of get less tired. I've reached an age, you guys, of tired eyes, and I relate a lot to people with glasses now that I have to wear these all the time. Driving, and it's been really cool to like see a lot more clearly, but yeah, I don't know. Anyhow, let me know if you guys are people who do glasses and if you need a break from them every once in a while. All right, so thinking about some stuff. We had a really cool conversation for Artcasters on Scott Strickland's channel, and it sounds like he had a really good convention, and it was fun. We had a convo with Scott Lost on there too. Scott Lost is a good dude. I foolishly bragged about Los Angeles, the Dodgers versus the Padres, not realizing that we would get crushed. I think the final score was like something like 11-1, which is a pretty bad defeat in baseball. So anyhow, needless to say, I probably shouldn't have teased or proudly boasted about my favorite team. I'm new to the sports fandom thing, so I'm learning these rules. But I'm guessing that's probably like some kind of unspoken rule, like if you brag about your team, they get crushed. Anyhow, okay. So just kind of, I'm using trying to tell you guys a little bit of what I'm using. These are just default brushes. This is the Kyle Ultimate Pencil Hard. That comes with Photoshop. And then this is just a technique that I kind of figured out when we were originally pitching the book. And I've gotten a little better at it. I might be a little rusty at it today. So it's going to be interesting to see like how much longer it takes me to do this. I have this down pretty well, but like I said, I had to take like a month or so off from doing these pages because I was going to school full-time and then teaching school full-time. So basically what I'm doing right now is just kind of going over it and starting to make passes of different values, trying to give a full gamut of values. I don't know if I've talked about values on this show before. I have to teach about them, but I don't know if I've talked about them on my live stream. How do you know what values to give? So Ansel Adams is this really great photographer who kind of came up with this idea of a value chart. It's like a value scale where Ansel Adams made like a should I waste my time drawing one? I'll describe it if we get any interest from live viewers. Then I will draw an example of a value chart. But right now, since it seems kind of like, I think there's some watchers, but I think everybody's kind of covertly stealth watching. So, but if that's something you want to see, I can draw it out. But anyhow, I'll explain it. If I were teaching this, I would visually show it. But anyhow, I want to continue working whilst I talk. So Ansel Adams, photographer, comes up with some people were asking Ansel Adams how they took such amazing photographs, right? How did Ansel Adams get such amazing photographs? And Ansel Adams responded with, they make sure, and I can't remember how big Ansel Adams' value chart was. I think it was 10. But anyhow, Ansel Adams had a value chart that went from black to white, and then all these different variations of gray in between. And Adams basically said they get the exposure on their camera to where it shows the full gamut of value. So it has a darkest dark, a lightest light, and then 10 variations of gray between. And so that's like the value chart. Now, the thing Ansel Adams was doing is a thing that artists have done for centuries, but the way Ansel Adams broke it down was kind of revolutionary for modern artists and is pretty much incorporated in most art classes, where when you're rendering, you can basically base your stuff on a 5 value chart, on a 10 value chart, on a 15 value chart. But your whole point is to basically be showing all the different ranges of value. So here, I'll draw it real quick, just in case anyone watches this after the fact. So here, let me put it on a new thing. So let's do a 5 value chart. Just real loosely here, real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I accidentally made it 6, so we'll just make it 5. Okay, so the theory of the value chart is if this is a 1, or let's do 1 as the darkest and 5 as the lightest. It can go either way. But okay, so if 5 is the lightest, which would be this, it's the color of the page, And then 1 is the darkest, which would be your absolute darkest dark. In this case, it's going to be, the darkest that this gets, right? This tool that I'm using. What's the darkest it'll go? And since it's a digital tool, eventually it's going to go to black, right? But then eventually you're going to have a 2, a 3, and a 4. Now, for Ansel Adams, they do like a whole 10 scale, right, of value. But basically what that means is, okay, 2 is going to be a little bit lighter, right? 2 is going to be a little bit lighter than 1, right? So then you've got your 2, and then your 3 is going to be like a mid-tone. This is probably too dark for a 3. So a 3 is going to be like a lighter shade of gray than the 2. Does that make sense? Maybe this will be a little bit darker. And then a 4 is going to be a much lighter shade. It's a little harder to do rendering on Photoshop. But a 4 is going to be clearly different from a 3, different from a 2, different from a 1. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so as you're rendering, you want to make sure you're showing 1s and you're showing 5s. Does that make sense? And when you're trying to, for the sake of this comic, I'm not doing like full rendering. But if I was rendering, say, from like a photograph or something like that, or from life or from something in observation, I would be constantly asking myself, what's a 1? What's a 5? What's a mid-tone? Is that between? Is that the darkest dark? Is that the lightest light? Is that the middle? Is that somewhere in between? And then as you do that, you kind of start creating more realistic shading. Does that make sense? Whereas on this, I'm doing a little bit more of an illustrator's approach. So there is thought to a light source. I am defaulting through most of this comic, imagining generally that there's a light source coming from the top right of the page. And I am in my head thinking which range of values I want it to be. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I teach that in a lot more depth when I teach art classes, but that's the value scale. So when I talk about like rendering, it's like that's kind of what I'm doing is like I'm trying to think, where are my core shadows, where's my highlights, where's my midtones, where's my reflected light. I probably overdo reflected light a little bit because it's kind of part of my style. So that's basically the thought that I'm putting in when it comes to rendering, which I think is actually it's kind of helpful for people to think about. So today, so it was a really good episode of Artcasters. It's been an interesting day. I've been really enjoying this very horrible podcast called The Adam Friedland Show. It's like a comedian who was part of this very raunchy... I can't name the the show that he was a part of before. But anyhow, he's very funny, very interesting. It's kind of a comedian type, like fake talk show kind of thing. Very absurdist humor. But I like it. It kind of fits my sensibilities of funny. So I listened to that a bit today, and some of Adam Friedland and Friends' old podcast as well. So that was kind of entertaining. And then there was a good period of time where I was listening to a little bit of the history of early Japan, because that's something it's interesting having to like teach world history and U.S. history, but history is mysterious to me in the sense that even when I learn about history, I don't fully remember a lot of what I learned. So I have to kind of dip back in the well. And when it comes to Japan, I really don't know a ton about the history of Japan. Like how it was founded, kind of some of the conflicts, early conflicts in the country and stuff like that. It's like everything I know about Japan's kind of like much more modern. And so it's been interesting to kind of read some of the histories of like the samurai and stuff like that. And it's fun. So that's something I was like listening to whilst working on, getting these pencils done. And then of course I was listening to some stuff that is about like, some of the kind of crisis that our country is currently in. When it comes to like, what's happening in Los Angeles and stuff. Or what I should say is what's being manufactured in Los Angeles. So it's been an interesting kind of day of just working on art, streaming quite a bit. Planning on streaming quite a bit more. And then what I've been thinking about is a couple things. One is I kind of lucked out this last year. It's things have been like financially a little more what is it that the kids say, cooked? I don't know. It's been a little bit rougher financially this last year. But we haven't wanted for anything, and that's kind of been nice. And then aside from that, like, I really love what I'm doing now, and I'm excited about. This is gonna sound silly to like people that are kind of younger, I guess, but it's like I'm excited about the prospect that you can get kind of embedded in a career like I was as an art director, a career you work really hard at, like to get to, because that's like kind of the top of where you can go with commercial art, and you can kind of get there and. It's never too late to kind of change course if you're like, yeah, this kind of isn't for me. That's been really exciting to me. I like learning new things, and it's been pretty fun to kind of learn new skills and also return to some older skills too, because I did really enjoy teaching back when I used to do it at Laguna College of Art and Design. So it's been really fun to kind of return to that. And see that you're not like locked into a system. Let's have more coffee. So I feel like it won't be foreign to anyone who has followed my channel for a while. I tend to make art that talks pretty openly about mental health issues. Two Stories was like a very candid story talking about, mental health struggles and stuff like that. And so what's been really interesting is like I haven't felt this like mentally sound and stable in years. And it kind of makes a big difference when you like what you do. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I like making art, and I like teaching art, and those are things I like doing. I don't know if I liked art directing. It could be really fun. There were times where I really enjoyed it. There's definitely the rare experience of, as a collective of artists, you can always kind of create something kind of greater than yourself. Like with a team, you can kind of collaborate and come up with stuff that might be beyond what you would do on your own. or like you can tackle challenges that seem impossible, and when you do that with a group, it's a very fun feeling. But I think at the end of the day, I think art direction could be fun, but I think where I was art directing was kind of bad news. After about 10 years of it, I don't know, felt kind of unfulfilling. So anyhow, I've just been very encouraged by the fact that you can kind of change things up, and that's still possible, even at my ancient age. So anyhow, so I was thinking about that. I'm definitely trying to kind of render this out. I'll probably start with all my foreground figures, and then on a new layer, possibly, start rendering my background as well. If you guys are up, I'm curious to know what side, like if you're in the U.S., what side of the coast you're on. Are you, on the East Coast? Because I'd imagine maybe it's like early morning in the East Coast, but maybe it's less. I don't know. Maybe it's like 4 or 5. Maybe you guys are just waking up for work. I don't know. I don't remember the time difference. I'm just kind of curious what time it is for you guys. Or are you guys like me and you're up at like an ungodly hour? Yeah, some of my coworkers were confused by, they were like, wow, you're taking the summer off. Well, what are you going to do? And I was like, work. And a lot of them were like, oh, that's depressing. And I'm like, no, that's what I want to do. I love making comics. It's one of my favorite things. If I were on a desert island, I might actually just make comics. Be hard to make comics on a desert island. I don't know what you'd use, I guess you'd end up with like some Chevette cave kind of markings and stuff, pieces of art. That's actually a really good question that I don't know if people ask themselves enough. I don't know what my honest answer to it is. The like on a desert island, would you still make art? You do gotta wonder. I don't know, because like art is pretty isolated. The process of making art is isolated. I know in my early 20s, when I first started making comics, it was a very solitary experience. But like, I guess like maybe you'd have the hope of rescue or something to kind of keep you making stuff. Because comics are definitely something I would do whether or not I was getting paid to do it. I just love doing them. But I wonder if like if my access to every human being disappeared, would I be like out making comics, or would I don't know, So the fight here is to try to get through, at least, this is how I've convinced myself to do this. I want to try to get through at least an hour of working on this page. And if I can get further, that's probably better. Now, I want to have like a clear light source here. That's kind of coming from... I'm kind of cheating some lighting here. I'm doing some movie lighting tricks. I don't want her to look like her face is, all in shadow though. But I am kind of changing up the light source here to kind of figure it out. I think maybe this would be good. But like, do I want her cheeks to look like they're on fire? No, probably not. Here we go. Okay. So in the previous scene, just so you guys know kind of where we're at, so Sophie, who's this lady who's been kind of befriending Elizabeth and trying to draw her into supernatural curiosities and stuff, has now convinced Elizabeth's on vacation to kind of have better weather and not get hit as badly with her sickness as she usually does. So they've kind of traveled, and then Sophie has, now Elizabeth's been hanging out with Sophie a lot. She's doing a lot of laudanum. And isn't doing too hot. And yet Sophie's convinced her to have this tea party on their vacation. So Elizabeth is kind of having trouble getting through the tea party a little bit. She's a little loaded on laudanum. And so Sophie's like guiding her, to go, mingle with some people across the way, but she's clearly having trouble kind of walking. And these women who've been invited to this tea party for this Victorian era book that I'm working on are kind of crap talking her. They're gossiping. They're saying, I don't think she's doing too well, So it's kind of a way for the author to do exposition without doing too much exposition. Like, exposition can be useful, but generally you want to show and not tell. And in this case, it's giving just a little bit of backstory, but it's not saying, did you know that Elizabeth, when she was 5 years old, had this thing happen? Like, there's kind of good and bad exposition in stories. I think this is pretty well done. Because from the exposition of, seeing these ladies gossip, you get the sense that it's becoming known that Sophie is almost like showing off Elizabeth Barrett Browning to everyone she meets. Anyhow, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And so it's on this rooftop at this villa that they've been at. And then right after this scene, which I'm, I think almost done with, there's going to be a shot inside the villa with a confrontation with Robert, who's concerned about her because she's, on laudanum and depressed and hanging out with Sophie a lot. And he doesn't trust Sophie. He's starting to dislike Sophie. So there's going to be this kind of confrontation. And then after that, I'm excited because I get to do another seance scene. And we haven't done a seance scene since the, 40s or 50s of the pages. It's funny because in terms of like reading this, we're 138 pages through. And I think in the amount of time I've spent penciling this page so far, you could probably read the whole thing. And yet I've been working on it for a couple of years now. Comics. This will end up being the longest graphic novel I've done, though, so far. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're shading. And just kind of thinking about stuff. So one thing I like to think about too This is like a weird kind of meditative thing to do, like the shading thing. But anyhow, one of the things that I tend to think about when I'm this deep into a project, you know, because I'm over halfway through. And one of the things that I am constantly thinking about is, what will I work on after this? Will I just, you know, retire and become a painter? You know, what's the next thing? And I think the next thing will be finishing book 2 of 2 stories. So in comics, at least for me, you know, I'm not like a super fast artist. You know, it's interesting. We'll have like really quick cartoonists on. I think we're going to have David Hartman on, actually, on my channel for the next Artcasters next week. And he is an incredibly quick artist, you know. So for a quick artist, I could imagine them knocking out, you know, graphic novel a year or something like that. But for me, I don't think I'm like the fastest artist. And so, you know, everything for me always ends up feeling like it's in slow motion a little bit. Like even my plans for my next books. You know, because this has to get done. And then when this gets done, then I'm going to knock out 100 and whatever pages for 2 Stories Book 2. Which, but the cool thing about 2 Stories Book 2 is that will go much quicker because I have it already thumbnailed out. Like all my thumbnails are done for that. So all I have to do is just create final pages for that. Although those might take a while because I'll have to get back in the flow of doing, you know, comics by hand. So that'll be interesting. So what I'm doing here is like a light rendering. It's not like a photorealistic rendering. It's like a real quick pass just to kind of you know, give the semblance of this kind of rendered look, but it's not full rendering. What I'd love to do over the summer too, but I may not end up having time, but I think it would be fun to do some of the lessons I've done in school for students. I think it would be fun to do those as YouTube videos, just showing the process of, like, you know, rendering, like full out rendering, or you know, using the grid technique, or like all sorts of other stuff. But I don't know if I'm going to have time on top of this book to do said things. I do think they do pretty well on YouTube. Because I do think a lot of that kind of early elementary art stuff does pretty well. Oh, what was I reading about? I was reading about infinite regression versus... This is like a couple days ago. And I'm going to get a lot of this wrong because I'm not a philosophy guy, but I like reading about philosophy. But I'm probably going to get a lot of this wrong. So I guess in philosophy there's... I'm going to try to talk about it at 2 in the morning and see if I can recall some of the premises here. So there's this idea of this is a Thomas Aquinas idea. So there's this idea of I think Thomas Aquinas might be the first guy to bring it up. It's brought up a lot in philosophy, but it's like basically there's ways of defined truth, and there's truth that kind of requires support, and then there's truths that are just kind of independent truths. They're non-dependent. So there's dependent truth, and then there's independent truth, I think. I know these are probably categorized as different words than the ones I'm using, but it's the general gist of it. So the idea is, you have truths that are just kind of inherent in themselves, like they don't require a definition. They kind of are just true and have to be just kind of accepted as true. So a good example is like gravity is just kind of true, like at least in our universe. Or a better thing is like an inch is just true without a requiring much. Like an inch of measurement, however you word what an inch is, once it's stated, it doesn't need definition. I don't know if that makes sense. Or like a mathematical truth, like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like it's a truth, and it wouldn't change even if you expressed it without language or in a different way. It's like always going to be a truth. So there's that kind of truth, and then there's truth like a microphone. And it's like, okay, well, why is a microphone a microphone? And then like you kind of have to get deeper into like what makes a microphone, like the components that make a microphone, the design of the microphone, what the utility of the microphone is. If you put it in a different context, the utility would change, and it requires kind of a justification for its existence. I don't know if that makes sense. This is the Aquinas idea. In a long-winded way, I'm sure somebody who's studied it more than like reading about it last week could probably do a better job. But anyhow, so the idea is like you have dependent truth, and then you have independent, like truth that just is true. And most things of substance, like anything material, generally requires justification for its definition. I don't know if that makes sense. Like the immaterial quite often doesn't require justification for its existence. It just is. Like, but matter itself, like things of substance, tend to require something they're dependent on to justify or define what they are. This is my attempt to kind of explain and also kind of parse through what I was reading about it. Like, do I understand it? So anyhow, because of this, there's like, I guess, this idea of for the things that are material to justify themselves, they're usually dependent on something, and then they're defined by that dependency. So it's like, this is like top-down thinking. And so a lot of that's like the process of science is like you're kind of defining things by their like justifying something's existence by the thing underneath it. So like the microphone, why does it exist? And then you kind of get into how the microphone was made, what the function of the microphone is, how is it hovering in the air, right? It's not just hovering in the air, it has like this arm holding it. And so the microphone being here is dependent on the microphone stand, which is dependent on the table that the microphone stands attached to, and that table's dependent on the floor, and it just regresses continually, right? The floor is dependent on the foundations of the house that it's in. The house's foundations are dependent on the soil. The soil is, you get what I'm saying. It just kind of goes regressively. Anyhow, the argument Aquinas threw out That's interesting to me, and I don't know what to make of it yet, but I think it's kind of interesting. And this is my like really non-philosophy, non-using the right terms kind of way of going through this idea, and seeing if I understand it too. But the idea is basically that so this starts getting into like physics. Like physicists look into this kind of thing, this Aquinas problem, because what Aquinas, like way before physics, like heavy physics were a thing, kind of stumbles upon this problem of like, well, if you have things that have dependent definitions, like, you know, things of matter, things of substance, that require a justification for their utility and also for their existence, right? Their utility and existence requires like an explanation, and usually that's an explanation that's a support that in itself requires a support. And this is anything of matter. So anyhow, this is a big quandary, and Aquinas basically says there's got to be like two kind of possible solutions to this. One is that these things regress, definitions regress to justifications by other things until you infinitely regress. And so this creates like an infinite regress, which in itself is kind of illogical. At least he comes to that conclusion. And then actually he says there's like three possibilities, or it's a circle, but he throws out the idea of a circle because he's like, something justifying itself by itself because it just, like, the microphone exists because of this thing, and then you kind of regress and regress and regress, and then eventually you just go back to, so the microphone exists because the microphone exists. It kind of becomes absurd. So anyhow, he comes up with this idea, or this conclusion that basically, you know, you either have two possibilities. It's like eventually you're going to get to the point where you need infinite regress, or you're going to do circular, which makes a lot less logical sense. Like it's a circle. Or you're going to need to go back to something that justifies matter that in itself is more similar to a constant of like the universe that just defines itself and doesn't need justification. So this is like a long-winded argument for like God in a weird way. Does that make any sense the way I worded that? Because I think I've blown it. But it's an interesting quandary because, so then you flash forward to like physics, and this is where a lot of the idea of like multiverses comes from, is the idea of this problem, like this problem of infinite regress. You know, it becomes like a big thing, at least philosophically. So a lot of physicists and philosophers start hypothesizing, hey, maybe there's a multiverse. Like maybe there is an infinite regress. And the way that there can be an infinite regress, even though our universe kind of begins in a Big Bang, is there's a million universes. And they're all kind of in these cycles of like booms and busts, and they all have these different properties. And, you know, we're just like one in an infinite number of universes. So it's like a multiverse thing. So it kind of creates like a solution to the infinite regress. Because the problem that science comes across with like later that kind of reinforces like Aquinas's initial kind of issue with the infinite regress thing is the Big Bang, right? Because if the Big Bang is like kind of the beginning of matter, how do you get matter from like, you can't just have like kind of matter from nothing. So anyhow, it's like it's a whole interesting quandary and stuff, but I don't fully grasp it, but I think I kind of got the gist of it. But anyhow, I was listening to a thing about that, and that was interesting. I do armchair philosophy quite a lot. But one of my problems is, like, I've, gone through a lot of education and stuff. I've got a master's degree and a BFA and stuff like that. But I've always had trouble with, like, the, like, official terms, which is kind of tough because, I'm in a field where there's a lot of official terms. Like, people outside of art may not understand that using the term gradient is important, as opposed to, like, if you call it an ombre, it again, like, I know hairdressers call gradients and hair ombres and stuff like that, but, like, the word gradient means something and is utilized all the time in graphic design and art. And maybe outside of art, gradient is just not as common of a term. So if you hear somebody using, like, a non-art term for something that relates to, it's just defining a gradient but by a different word, it can be frustrating as an artist to hear the kind of non-art word describing the same thing. I imagine myself doing that with every other field. Like, where I will forget the special terms. I get the gist of the concept, but, like, the term itself, is a blur. And that happens to me all the time. So I kind of wonder how annoying it would be if you're well versed in these things to kind of hear somebody using, like, they're kind of, they're kind of like saying ombre instead of, gradient. And kind of now, at least, that's how I learned what an ombre was the first time a client told me to change an ombre. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, and I had to talk to somebody who went to a hairdresser to kind of understand what an ombre was. And I was like, oh, it's just a gradient. Anyhow, I kind of wonder, I'm sure it's kind of similar when I'm talking about anything outside of my field, where people are just like, yeah, I know what I think I get what you mean, but I don't think you realize, I don't think that means what you think it means. Kind of thing. Okay, we're at about an hour. We got a dead chat, but we do have some watchers, so that's cool. I will probably finish shading this panel, and then I will probably play a brief commercial. We'll kind of decide on which one at the time. So I've made a new layer. I'm going to kind of do the background real quick. I'll probably just turn the opacity down, and we're going to kind of quick mask it, like, in the sense that I'm not going to mask it. I'm just going to delete out areas where it's overlapping. And we're getting there. So my secret hope here is to actually just finish this page on stream. My realistic hope is that I will finish the shading at least, and then I'll be able to do the colors tomorrow at worst case scenario. So we'll see how far we get on this. But I am doing that little self-reward thing where, anybody who's watched my streams are probably familiar with this technique, but basically I'm like, I cannot break from the stream until I have finished shading this particular panel, and then I'm allowed a refill of my coffee or a glass of water. All right. So we're going to kind of bust through this panel. I will tell you guys, this book is coming out really beautiful. I've been really impressed with it. It's just kind of cool, and it's pretty stunning when you see all the pages together. So I am pretty proud of this. I think this will be a pretty strong book. But it's going to be a long summer because I got to just haul and knock out as many of these pages as I can. The fun part is I have no distractions other than just like around the house stuff. And that's good news. The downside is, I think I told you guys, I had to fix my dryer. My dryer died. I know this is, you guys, hot drama. My dryer died. First world problem kind of thing, right? Where it's like, oh, well, you have a dryer. Yeah, I know. But anyhow, we had a clothes dryer die, and we are not loaded with money. So I can't just go out and like buy a brand new dryer. So then I looked on YouTube and took apart our dryer, disassembled it, and rebuilt parts of it. And weirdly enough, it's fixed, at least for now, at least temporarily. I have successfully gotten that dryer fixed. We'll see how long the fix lasts. Like, if I only fixed it for a week, I'm not a handyman type, so who knows? But right now it seems like it's fixed. But I will tell you the process, man, of that. I don't know if this is an age thing too, but it's like I did all this work on the dryer, and then now my back is like killing me, and I have these like cuts all over my arm from just the disassembly and just aching muscles and stuff from fixing a dryer. Just I don't know, I don't remember working on stuff like projects like that really taking as much of a physical toll. And I'm a person, I've been exercising and that kind of stuff, but I wasn't expecting to just be like, wow, I didn't realize I got like so many little injuries from just this one little task. But anyhow, so there's that on top of my usual exhaustion at this time of night. Is like my body's just beat up from fixing that dryer, man. Thing wanted to dry me out. I think it was like tired of drying clothes, and it wanted to just take out its owner. Anyhow, so that's exciting. That's my dryer story. I know, guys. These are the most thrilling stories you're ever going to hear on the internet. But I will tell you, it felt good to get that thing fixed. Like, as a person who does not do well at like handyman type stuff, anytime I manage to kind of somewhat figure it out, even though technically I'm not really like, it's not really self-taught kind of thing, because it's like, it's not like I figured it out. I just like watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and then once something didn't make sense, I had to like really analyze it and kind of figure out where I went wrong reading the Lego assembly directions, basically. But I have to admit, it still does feel really good to like fix something and actually be able to do it, because of the fact that I'm usually pretty awful with that kind of thing. So anytime I'm able to like bypass that and do kind of a typical, handyman guy type thing, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, it's just very unexpected that it would work. And I'm pretty good at like figuring things out, but my luck with that sort of activity has not been the best in the world. A good example, learning how to like refret a guitar and like radius fretboard and stuff. Like that's something I never in my life thought I was going to be able to successfully do. And when I took on that project a couple years ago to like refret and radius a guitar, I just thought it was going to be an utter failure. And the fact that it's like playable and good, and I managed to do it with 2 guitars, and even input like neck inlays and stuff like that. It's like I know it's not like the most amazing work. It's not like full out luthier type work, but the fact that I was able to do it and teach myself how to do it from watching tutorials and stuff was a very fulfilling experience. I guess that's probably how people feel when they watch like art tutorials and figure out an art thing or whatever. But I have the opposite where it's like, I'm used to kind of figuring out weird things in art that I don't understand, but like everything else, it's like, I feel like I'm cheating the system somehow to like figure out how to like install a car battery or do something I'm really bad at. All right. That being said, what we're going to do here is finish up this background. And then we'll be able to take a commercial break kind of thing. Okay. We're kind of doing that. Now I'm gonna let's see if we did that effectively. Feels like it's kind of blurry around the edges here, right? Like this part that I cleaned up doesn't look very well cleaned up in this particular area. Like kind of looking a little glowy and crappy. I just have to really clean up those edges more. I feel like I was doing fine, and then something around here happened where I think I was getting like loosey goosey with the edges or something. Needless to say, I'm gonna fix that. Oh, don't want to fix it so much that I erase the other stuff. But yeah, I'm not liking this blurry edge thing because that looks very digital. And the goal of this book is to not look digital. I want it to look, more kind of hand done. All right, here we go. We're just kind of cleaning up edges a little better than I was doing before. It's already looking a million times better. I knew there would be a slight kind of readjusting curve kind of thing going into this because I had this down like rocket science by the 134th page, but then I had to take a break. So now it's like I'm a little rusty at it. Got to get kind of back in the flow. All right. How we doing? That looks a little better. Okay. Save. We'll finish up our background. So I know that this is going to have kind of a more serious shadow here. Goes more to that darkest dark on the value scale. And now we're going to do just a little bit more of this kind of cleaning up. Okay, I know these are going to go almost like this. It's like kind of a dent in here. And then this is going to be more of a, starts to get a little darker as it gets closer to the corner here. Cool, cool, cool. And now we're going to get into these guys. We know are going to be darker here. And then it's going to kind of widen out. I know this part needs to be super dark. Thing might be a little bit lighter. But I know this part needs to be super dark. And then it gets a little lighter as it comes towards us. And then this part is just going to be super dark here. And probably just around here that it gets a little more. Okay. And then we have our last bit of cleanup here. Getting a little closer. These are chairs. They're kind of in the foreground. I am talking to myself about the project, but it's okay. That's kind of part of doing art. I often will find myself kind of narrating what I'm doing. I don't know if you guys do the same thing, but often when I'm drawing, I will think to myself or kind of narrate the process of what I'm doing. Add a little bit of shadow here. I definitely see some areas that I'd like to kind of improve on. There is this chair here. And that's going to be here. Get much darker here. And then we're going to have it get a lot darker here. I want it to get a little bit dimmer, and now I can kind of turn it down and we can kind of start erasing areas that are unnecessary. So yeah, if you guys are tuning in, this is Joshua Kemble's live stream. I'm working on page 138 of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is a graphic novel for Turner Publishing. And I have to do a buttload of pages for over the summer. And it's really fun. But it's a lot of work, and I'm working weird hours on it. So, we've got this character in the foreground. We're going to kind of get rid of her, overlap with the background. Start getting a little more specific with what I'm getting rid of here. Definitely don't want it overlapping this beautiful, beautiful word balloon. One thing that's crazy, if you ever look at Winsor McKay's old like Little Nemo and Slumberland pages, they're like beautifully done, right? It's hard to imagine a more beautiful comic than some of the comics this man was doing. But I will say, speech balloons, like word balloons, have come a long way. Like, other things in sequential art may not have really improved that much. Like if I look at like Frank King, I don't think there's a lot of artists that are better than Frank King nowadays. Like I think I look back at that, it's pretty amazing. Same with Winsor McKay. It's like there's not really any cartoonists alive today that are drawing to an extent where I'm like, where they're like putting Winsor McKay's draftsmanship to shame. It's like actually quite the reverse. There's a lot of artists nowadays, including myself, who Winsor McKay totally put to shame. So it's like the guy, you know, in 1907 who was doing this stuff was like ahead of everybody. But those word balloons, man, are horrible. the early Winsor McKay word balloons. So things have progressed in comics, especially with the readability of word balloons. Okay, here is what I need to fix here. I don't want this little blurry edge, especially here with the word balloon. And then I think we're kind of good to move on to the next panel. Okay, so I'm gonna save. We have rendered panel 1 of 4. I'm gonna stand up, stretch my back, and play a trailer, and I'll be right back. If you guys are watching this, make sure you hit that like button, that bell, so you get notifications when we're about to go live. Here is... I'm going to play Frank's Adventures at the Library again.
Our heroic adventurers fought orcs, monsters, sorcerers, necromancers. Now they find themselves in front of a mystical library. What shall they find? It's all in the roll of the dice. We've come this far. There's great power behind this door. I can feel it. We just have to get past it. This door is no match for my axe. I shall chop it down. You always want to use brute strength. Why don't you try knocking? We'll try it your way. You may enter. The library is open to all those who seek knowledge. Feel free to look through our tomes. Maybe you'll find the answers you seek. I sense great power here, and it's behind those shelves. Indeed, there are powerful items hidden behind these shelves, but you can only get there through the enchanted words. Do you have those words? I believe I do.
Tremble before the Krembo.
There is great power. Look at that glove. Must be so powerful. That is not where I sense this power. I must get closer. I found them. I found the sacred manuscripts written by Joshua Kemble. Behold, I now possess 2 stories and Jacob's apartment. Please tell us more about 2 stories and Jacob's apartment, and who is Joshua Kemble? Xeric Award-winning cartoonist Joshua Kemble is a freelance artist, graphic designer, and author. 2 Stories is a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. Jacob's Apartment is a coming-of-age graphic novel in the vein of Ghost Road and Fun Home. It weaves together the threads of spiritual faith, identity, purpose, love, and loss to create an engrossing world in which waking and sleeping dreams collide. You have made your choice. The passage is now closed. Wait, can I get that glove? No. Oh. All right, let's go.
All right, well, that was Frank Salazar's amazing ad. I basically accept ads from viewers where they can mention their own channels and stuff like that. But they, if they mention Jacob's Apartment 2 Stories, or if they want to, they could actually mention, my albums. Music albums and stuff. If they're under like a minute and a half, Frank got extra time because it's Frank. He's a great dude. And also he had stop motion in there, which is cool. But anyhow, generally you want it under a minute or a minute and a half. And if you submit one, you want to cross promote your thing, as long as it's, fitting the terms of service and stuff, I'll add it to the rotation. Because I do these live streams a lot, and I need to take occasional breaks, and it's nice to have viewer-submitted commercials to kind of play while I like get up and stretch or whatever. All right, so we're gonna do the next panel, kind of doing the same exact thing over again, and just trying to do the shading for these panels. And I think we're doing a pretty good job here, guys, if I do say so myself. I am a little tired, but the goal here is at minimum to basically shade this page, and then we'll see kind of where we're at once we're kind of done shading. I just think art is a really interesting thing. I'm always curious what draws people to doing art. I know that nowadays I hear a lot of, because I've done commercial art for over 20 years professionally. There's a lot of concern about AI in the industry kind of taking over and harming our ability to do the thing I've been doing professionally for 20 plus years. There's a lot of concern about that in the industry, but I think people are really missing out on some of the beauties of like drawing in general. Because I've been thinking about this too, like what makes people want to learn how to draw and want to make, pretty pictures. And I feel like if it was just prompting, that's kind of equivalent to like almost like buying a puzzle at a store. Like there's people who do puzzles as a hobby, or a coloring book or something. You know what I mean? There's people who do that. But it's like, I don't know, there's a strange group of people who usually want to learn how to draw or make cool things. And like someone else drawing it for them is just not enough. I think that like, I'm trying to think of like the earliest times where I got really into drawing. I do remember it being something that it was fun to do. Like, it was frustrating. It's always been frustrating, but it's also been really fun. Like a challenge I like doing. It's almost like, when somebody's learning how to shoot a basket in basketball or something. I remember that, too. When I was younger, I really enjoyed playing basketball, and I would spend hours, just shooting brick after brick, like, of baskets until eventually I started landing the ball in the basket. And it was frustrating, but it was fun. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I think art's kind of the same thing, where it's like, it was just really a fun challenge to try to kind of get it right. And then there's something really meditative about it. Like, you can kind of lose track of time and stuff. That's really kind of beautiful. Okay, so here we go. We've got this being shaded. And now we're going to kind of continue over to here. We're just kind of shading these different figures in panel 2. So I remember some of the earliest drawings I did. I still have these somewhere, like probably like rotting away in our garage. But I remember, I think there's a comic I made. It wasn't a comic, it was a kid's book, but it was called The Bravest Knight. And I wrote it and illustrated it. And it's horrible. It's probably from when I was like, maybe like 2 years old or something. Or maybe 3 or 4, I can't remember. But I was pretty young. And it was basically just like a weird version of Star Wars. Like, there were like TIE fighter type things and, you know, knights, but they were fighting with like lightsaber type things and flying spaceships and stuff. So there was that. I should find that and do a video of it. I think you guys would dig it. And then I also had this thing called the Sock Family, and I used to write these children's books called the Sock Family, and it was about a family of socks that lived under a drawer. And I don't know why, but like my idea of proportion and scale was really weird at that age when I was doing the Sock Family. I was probably like 5 or 4. But I remember thinking that they would like fly around in planes that they made out of like Coca-Cola cans. And I don't know why I thought that would work like logistically. And then they slept in matchbooks. Which again, I don't know why in my head a human sock, even if you're a little kid, would fit in a matchbox. Like, but anyhow, they had matchboxes for beds, and it was this family of socks. I should reread those because I haven't looked at those in probably like a decade. And now that I think about it, I'm like, what the heck was the plot, though? Like, I mean, because just a family of socks, that's not a plot. You know, like, what was the struggle? What were they trying to achieve? What was I telling you guys about the Sock Family? I always thought it would be fun to retackle some of those old ideas. But that's one of the problems of creativity is you'll kind of have like a million good ideas. Sometimes you have bad ideas you want to do. Like, they're not necessarily great. They're like a weird gamble of like, maybe this is so bad it's good kind of thing. Things that would be fun to explore, and there's limited time. Which is why I'm an advocate of being kind of fearless when it comes to, you know, making something, because you just have limited time to make stuff. So you can either opine about making the perfect thing, or you can just pick an idea that is fresh on your mind that sounds like the best one you've got currently and kind of go with it and see what happens, you know? I have to wonder, though, because like the state that our country's currently in, I kind of wonder if we're going to end up in like the next few years, like having like a mandated style of art that artists are allowed to do, and like other arts just being banned outright. Like, I don't know. That's the thing that's interesting. I don't know how long we're going to have the freedom to make, you know, the art we want to make or tell the stories we want to tell. We might be heading into an era where that just isn't happening anymore. I don't know. Like, here's a question. With Lord of the Rings, was like Sauron, like, were the orcs and all the evil wizards and stuff in Lord of the Rings, were these people allowed to make art? like, like if you know, if darkness had engulfed everything, would you have like a bunch of orc painters and like would the Nazgul like start painting as a hobby once they had taken over the earth? I don't. These are questions that can't be answered, you know, but we might have answers for eventually, like pretty soon. I'm not being hyperbolic. You guys ever wonder that? Like, you watch like a fantasy story and you're like, what is the end game for these bad guys? Like, what did they get out of this once evil has won? Like, you know. I'm trying to think of like kids shows with like, what was Dr. Claw trying to do in Inspector Gadget? Do you guys remember what his goal? What was his end game? I think that's one of the great things about The Dark Knight and the Joker or whatever in the Christopher Nolan one, where, you know, at some point he kind of mentions that he's like a dog chasing a car. He wouldn't even know what to do if he actually caught up to it. All right, guys, we're getting closer. Whew. I gotta say, though, the idea of coloring this is getting less likely because I am starting to feel the hours, you know. But I do appreciate if you're hanging out with me, and I hope I'm keeping you company at these weird, strange hours that I'm working. So definitely rendering this out, seeing how things go. Keeping that light source at the top right. Rocking through this. Yeah, I'm starting to feel the vibe of it though. Like one of the things that's been an adjustment is just getting back in the flow of working in this style on these pages. Because again, it's been a few months since I've gotten back to the comic. And so now I'm starting to get in a flow where I'm like, okay, I'm remembering how this is done. The one thing I totally forgot too that I'm going to have to add on here, and maybe I'll do that at the end, is the railing. There is supposed to be a railing here. Although I could adjust and not have the railing. That might actually be better. So let me try to... Because I was going to originally... That's why I had her hand kind of positioned like this. Was have her kind of leaning on a railing. But in theory, we could be in front of the railing. And it really wouldn't be affecting the... the readability of the art much at all. Yeah, I could see that. Okay, so maybe the railing's behind the camera. All right, so we have our dress here. Dress is going to get darker as it goes back. Kind of don't know if I... Actually, I'm not opposed to that. Okay. I'm not liking my shading here. So, quick fix that we'll do here is... I actually don't mind that, but I want it to get a little darker here. Okay. Very good, very good. Okay. Let's go ahead and do this wall. Ooh, that was starting a little too dark there. Start a little lighter. Okay, we're getting there. Gonna kind of erase out where that's overlapping. The finer brush. We're about an hour and 30 minutes into the stream, which is cool. we finished about a panel and a half. Almost a panel and a half. And we're just busting through this. It's coming along pretty good. It's got to kind of clean this up a little bit. Maybe this part will stand out a little more. I'm not quite doing this part of the wall yet. All right, let's turn that opacity up. Clean up our edges a little bit more. All right. Oh, that back. It's funny, I don't get back pain a ton, but that dryer wanted to kill me. Man, clothes dryer when I was trying to fix it. All right. We're going to try to get through all of the shading for this page. We'll see if I last. Because it is like 3:30 in the morning at this point where I'm at. I'm curious what time it is for you guys if you're watching. Let me know. I always find time changes different. Do you guys find it weird that time in itself is like a bizarre construct? Like people don't fully understand? And time is really strange in the sense that it can be like, it can kind of change based on perception. It can proceed differently for people. It can go slower. I always find that weird in like space travel fiction, you know, where somebody will travel to like another galaxy and then they'll experience like 50 years and then, you know, return to Earth or whatever, and like, you know, it's been like a million. it's always interesting to me, like the idea that time is so strange. Although one of the funnest things about comics is the way that comics and the sizing of panels and the pacing of story can really like freeze time or cause time to accelerate or create a tempo. Like, I'm really interested in that with comics. And I like to play with stuff like that too. So here we go. We're kind of cleaning up the edges here. Gradually working our way very slowly through this page. But it's getting there. Okay, let's erase this out. And then we'll kind of go back in and shade the last section of this. Okay. Ooh. Where are we at? Okay, 15 more minutes before our next break. See if we can finish this panel in that time. So, the one thing I would like to do at some point this summer, if I have time, is I have these new, the two latest Daniel Klaus books that I have yet to have read. And I'm kind of excited about reading those. And then I have a whole bunch of books from friends. Like, I know that I got like every book by Scott Lost and every book by Keith Foster, and I really want to read them. I'd like to take the time to read those books. And I think that's good for like getting rejuvenated, you know, to make more comics too, is like to get that what was I doing here? Art wise, I don't know why I was making a line there or there. They're like weird residual lines. So let's go back to this. Yeah, so I have like a bunch of books I gotta read, you know? Be nice to read some of them. Yep, we're almost there. Almost there, guys. Kind of knocking out the shading here. One thing I am doing tomorrow, though, I'm going to do trivia night at Bravery. It's a super fun thing to do. There's a local microbrewery out here that does a trivia night. And I went the last few times. Well, I went the first night they had it, and then I wasn't able to make it to the next one because I had to do stuff for work. But this week, I am really looking forward to going because it should be fun. All right. All right, we're going to kind of get into this a little bit. Get this part of the background done. I'm kind of working a little differently than I did the first round. But that kind of keeps it interesting. I do like to vary I know there are some people who will like draw the different assets of a comic on like separate layers. You know, so they can like reuse backgrounds and character poses and stuff like that. But I think there's something really great about everything being redrawn, even when you're repeating a background. There's just something cool about that to me. But it might be silly. It's just something I like. It's definitely not efficient. It's not the most efficient thing. All right. We are getting closer, guys. Closer, closer indeed. And here I can start fixing where it's overlapping. Oh. All right, and then we're gonna do this last figure. Kind of do the shading on this. So anyhow, the last time I did do trivia night at Bravery was really fun. Our table was just kicking butt. Like we were doing so good, and then it got to sports. And as much as I'm now kind of a fan of baseball, I am not gonna. I'm not gonna ace a sports part of a trivia thing ever. So the table I was with at the time, we were just like really just on a tear, just boom, 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 music, all of it. And then it got to sports, and we just got eaten alive. I think there were some other things too. There were like soda questions. And I'm like, dude, I don't know anything about like soda. The only kind of fun trivia fact I know about soda is Coca-Cola used to be brewed with actual cocaine, which is frightening. But if you look at old Coca-Cola ads, it's kind of funny in retrospect, because you look at the side effects that they're mentioning as positives, and it just it like, you know, it'll say like relieves fatigue, like, you know, helps with weight loss, and like weird ads that eventually kind of are advertising an illicit drug that at the time was, I guess, legal. But that's like the only, I don't know a lot of soda knowledge. My soda knowledge is very limited. Okay, guys. What was one of the other things from Trivia Night that threw me off? Oh, yeah. It was about fast food chains or something. It was talking about the second largest fast food chain for hamburgers or something. And I was like, huh. Like, we were really thrown off by it. We're like, okay, we definitely know McDonald's is going to be number one. No question. But then what's number two, you know? And we're like, it must be like Burger King or something like that. But like no one I know eats at Burger King. And I kind of continue through it, and then it turned out it was Wendy's. And we were like, oh, I think we got that one wrong. So I think we had speculated that it was like Burger King or Jack in the Box or something like that. You know, it couldn't have been Carl's, because Carl's Jr. is like, what is it, Hardee's or whatever. But anyhow, that was interesting, realizing that we got kind of duped by that. So it was sports, fast food, and sodas, where our trivia knowledge just fell apart like dominoes. All right. Here we go. Let's continue. Continue this out. Okay, I think we're getting there. I think I want this to be a little darker here. Okay, we're getting there, guys. And then there is one more shading thing. Gonna go through. And we're at like the 2-hour mark. The fun part is, I don't think the next panels are going to take as long as these first two. But I think the next panels are going to be more more quick, because they're really zoomed in. Those tend to take less time than the far away, like long shot type things. We're not done yet though. Can't celebrate yet. We haven't quite gotten there. Okay. Now we can kind of start erasing. Erase out this section. Start start clarifying this area. This area here. Get her back. It's kind of weird dress. All right. And we're just cleaning up the edge here. Oh my goodness, you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna, I don't like that getting... Just looks strange how it got really dark right there on her butt, so I'm gonna correct that a little bit so it doesn't look as strange. Okay, now I'm gonna merge these. Merge visibly. And then we'll take a look at where we're at. Okay, let us take a break. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some coffee or water or something, but definitely stand up, stretch, all that fun stuff, and then I'll be back and we'll finish up this page, at least the rendering. So let's see how far we go. Here is let's do Kids Say Kemble. This is a Jim Lujan cartoon.
We know the Georgia kids say the craziest thing.
So, little Susie, do you have any brothers or sisters? I understand you're in 3rd grade. How do you like that? Do you like your teacher? You like to do a lot of fun things at school? You got any hobbies, Susie? Any things you like to do when you're not in school? I hear you like to read.
Well, right now I'm reading 2 stories written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. It grapples with faith and mental illness. It's ultimately a story about redemption. It's a savage piece of writing. Also, I just finished up Jacob's Apartment, another one by Kemble. Jacob's Apartment weaves together elements of spiritualism and relationship dynamics, as well as atheism, and all the while it deals with abandonment and loyalty. It's a fierce, fierce read.
Do you like ponies?
All right, here we go. So let's get going. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. This should be relatively quicker. What was I doing for the sky there? Yes, okay. This time I'm going to do the background first and then the characters next. Okay. That was kind of easy peasy. Oh. Okay, there we go. Got that. I'm going to just do this with selection tools for like the selections in the background. I think that'll work okay. And then we're going to do... And let's do another selection tool here. Okay, we're getting closer. Okay. I'm gonna do a okay. Do some more of this selection stuff. Okay, and then let's do this background and see if that works. I think we'll get there. Okay, and let's do just kind of darkening this thing. All right, guys. So this one, take this, modify this, expand it, and then we'll do some shading here. It's going to get darker as it goes here. Going to be a lot darker as it goes towards the wall. A lot darker here. All right, and I think we're getting closer. Okay, and then let's just continue. You know what? I think these I can hand do in a way that's not as strange. Oh. And this will have a little bit of light, a little bit of darkness. There we go. Okay, and let's get her chair too. That way we can just focus on the fun rendering stuff once we're done. Let's see here. All right, and let's do kind of a A little bit of a chair vibe. Chair check. Okay. Getting there, guys. Okay. Now I'm going to do the figure. Let's do this figure first, actually. I think this will be easier to kind of work from the background to the foreground. In this case. Maybe not, but we'll find out. Her hat. Some flowers. Flowers that are getting a little bit more sunlight as they go. And this will sort of go back here. Now let's get this get this party started here. Okay, we're kind of working through it. Adding some shading. Getting some depth in there. Okay, here we go. We're going to do some shadow here. Shadow that will eventually be overpassed by this arm. The arm's going to kind of create a bit of an area here that has shadow. It's going to be a dark, dark shadow underneath that arm. You have this. And this is going to kind of go into here. All right. Ooh. Gotta say, my hand is dying, guys. I don't know if I like this, though. I don't know if I like how I rendered this yet. Let's see if we can kind of get into a little more realism in the shadows there. A little darker down here. Darker here. There we go. I think that's better. Okay, now we're going to get to our foreground figure. Miss Gossipy Gossip over here. And this will be fun. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Okay, and then we're going to do just a shadow here. And we're going to kind of throw some shadows here. I think we're getting there, guys. Let's get this in here is darker. Erase it. All right, I'm gonna call that pretty good. I don't like what's happening here. I feel like that's breaking up too much and it's starting to look kind of digital in this spot. I don't want it to look digital. There we go. That's a little better. That'll have to do for now. I'm going to save. And now we're going to do our last bit. The last bit we got. Start with the eyes because that's fun. You guys, I think we might have gotten through rendering this page. It's taken me a little longer than I think it should have, but it's been a while, so I'm still a little rusty. But hey, we're almost done with rendering the page. And then, or shading it. And then from there, we will eventually wind up coloring. Which might be something I'll have to do in the morning. I mean, we're already in the morning, but after I sleep, you know, it might be a good thing to do after that. But the fun thing is we're in summer schedule, man, so I am going to be on kind of weird hours. That is just kind of naturally going to happen here. I hope everybody's having a good day or a good morning. I know that most likely, if you are watching this on my channel, there will probably be another live stream in 4 to 5 hours, I'd say, after this. But for now, we're still finishing this up, so I can't sign off till I'm done here. But we are getting closer, which is good news. I'm going to have this kind of go here. Kind of half rendering this. Don't like this overlapping that ear. There we go. And now we can kind of get into this this kind of shading. Here we go. Let's get the hair here. Hair here. Okay. And we are going to have this kind of create some shadows back here. So if you guys have been watching this and enjoying it, make sure you hit that like and that bell so you get notifications when I'm about to go live again. Make sure you're subscribed. I know this one wasn't the most entertaining. It was a pretty dead chat, but there definitely were some live viewers, so I do appreciate those of you who have been tuning in live and kind of watching this as it goes. I hope that you guys are having an awesome day. We are getting closer and closer to kind of wrapping this beast. So that is what I plan on doing here in a second. So I just have to kind of get some of this rendering business done. And the fun part about that is it's kind of a section by section kind of thing, but we will get there. We're closer than ever to done with this page. I don't think I'm going to be doing colors. I thought I'd go straight through and do colors, but I think I underestimated. Well, I did say from the get-go, worst case scenario, I will shade the whole page. Best case scenario, I would get color done too. So we ended up in the worst case scenario, which isn't too bad. And I will finish those flat colors probably tomorrow, and hopefully have a burst of energy and ideas for topics and things we can talk about during that stream. So we're kind of getting there. Just getting this hand. And then we're going to get some of these shadows. Get some of these shadows. Some of these shadows too. And it'll probably go over to here. And we'll just kind of have it go back here. A little dark here. And now we can kind of get into backgrounds, although I should probably just do this plate. Okay, now that we've got the plate, let's do our background. Oh my goodness, you guys, we're so close. Okay, our background here is going to be pretty self-explanatory. It should just go real dark. And then here kind of dark too. We'll turn this off for a second, see if I can kind of make that selection. Will the selection work? Haha, yes. Yes. Okay, select, modify, expand. Let's expand it a bit, and then select inverse. And let's delete. Yeah. All right, and then we're gonna do just a little bit of cleanup here. There's a little bit of overlap here I don't like. What is going on here? Oh. I didn't like how that went over. Okay, now we'll do just one last, or a few last ones. Shouldn't be too hard to do. Okay, and let's get this little section. And let's get this little section too. Okay, and this section. Arctic Wolf Artist said, how is art going? It's going okay, man. I've been working pretty late, you know, at it for a couple hours. Almost done with the rendering of this, and then what I need to do next is the coloring. But I think I will likely be calling it pretty soon, and then eventually we're gonna do. Arctic Wolf said, I don't think I've seen soft shading in comics. Neat. Yeah, this is page 138 of Not Death But Love for Turner Publishing, and the whole style of it is supposed to kind of look like Victorian, almost like tinted comic pages. And it's pretty exciting. But it's like it's a book about Elizabeth Barrett Browning and the Brownings from like the Victorian era with like seances and stuff like that. So it's going to end up having this kind of unique vibe to it, but I'm glad you dug it. Okay, I'm going to set it up a little bit for color tomorrow. All I'm going to do right now is basically make my selections for what will inevitably just be kind of the overall white area. Okay, so then we'll have that kind of locked and ready to go tomorrow. Here, I'll show you what the finished pages look like. Let's grab page 130. Let's see, like 137. Yeah. Here, I'll just pull one of the JPEGs of the last page or something so you can kind of see what they look like. Oh. So this is kind of what the final pages look like. They look something like that. Arctic Wolf said, don't forget to consider various types of speech bubbles and fonts to fit the scenes. I 100% can consider that. Thank you. Yeah, so that's basically it for tonight. Thank you, Arctic Wolf, for participating in the chats. Yeah, it's been about 2 hours and 30 minutes, something like 4:30 in the morning. So I will call it tonight. I'm going to probably be back live streaming, I would say, in like maybe 4 or 5 hours. where I'll finish up this page and then we'll be on to the next. But that's it for shading, page 138 of Not Death But Love, the Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And we will plug through until we get all 200 and something done for Turner Publishing by the end of summer. So I will see you guys in a couple hours. I'll be live streaming a lot. So if you haven't yet, hit the bell, subscribe, so you get notifications, and all that fun stuff, and hit like and all that enjoyable stuff. I will see you guys on the next live stream. That'll probably be in like 4 hours, and good night. Thanks, Arctic Wolf, for chiming in. That was cool. All right, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's live stream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream.